Around 1939, Dr. Paul Muller made the discovery of DDT's deadly properties of killing insects. After its popular usage in World War II in battling malaria, it became well known to the public and many realized how powerful it can be to rid all pests. The chemical was sprayed over cities, homes, public places, and farms. Pesticide was welcomed by everyone and deemed completely safe to be around. Thinking that it was completely safe, it became part of their daily lives. It was soon recognized to be part of the fight against polio.
With the possibility of a serious infantile paralysis epidemic, health authorities of the city of San Antonio, Texas, attacked the germ carriers throughout the city. With the war-discovered DDT in special sprayers, sections of the city are blanketed with the insecticide in the fight to stop the spread of the dread poliomyelitis. Every suspected spot is sprayed.
Business was booming for the wide use of, as some called it, the atomic bomb of pesticides. It was advertised everywhere that DDT is good for people, plants, and animals. Carson at the time was a time-to-time writer of a series of books dedicated to the wonders of the ocean. They were called Under the Sea Wind, Edge of the Sea, and The Sea Around Us. The young writer was a marine biologist for the U.S. Bureau of Fisheries, which is now called the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services. Ever since she was a child, she had loved the outdoors and wanted to be a writer since the very beginning. Knowing the harms of pesticides, she decided that it would be a topic for her next book in 1962, Science Spring. Her books allowed the media and public to know about the dangers of the strong chemicals by using real-world examples of what pesticides can do. Soon Carson became well known to many, such as Charles M. Schulz, who mentioned Carson in a Peanuts comic strip, portraying her as a role model for girls. After publication, President John F. Kennedy directed his Science Advisory Committee to her claims. The research led them to strengthen regulation on the chemicals she had mentioned. Her dedicated work led scientists to take a closer look at pesticides and their effects on humans that would have been overlooked otherwise. Carson became famous and was even featured on live interviews on television, such as CBS Reports, to talk about her work in her book Science Spring.
Now, to these people, apparently the balance of nature was something that was repealed as soon as man came on the scene. Well, you might just as well assume that you could repeal the law of gravity. The balance of nature is built of a series of interrelationships between living things and between living things and their environment.
The major claims in Miss Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring, are gross distortions of the actual facts, completely unsupported by scientific experimental evidence and general practical experience in the field. If man were to faithfully follow the teachings of Miss Carson, we would return to the Dark Ages, and the insects and diseases and vermin would once again inherit the earth.
Not everyone agreed with Carson's claims. She was accused of spreading lies, being unscientific, hysterical, and even a communist. The New Yorker, a popular magazine, dedicated 3 editions to Carson. A Californian man wrote to the magazine, "Miss Rachel Carson's reference to the selfishness of insecticide manufacturers probably reflects our communist sympathies, like a lot of our writers these days. We can live without birds and animals, but as the current market slump shows, we cannot live without business. As for insects, isn't it just like a woman to be scared of a few little bugs? As long as we have the H-bomb, everything will be okay. P.S. She's probably peace nut too." P. Rothberg, president of the Montrose Chemical Corporation of California, was an affiliate of the Stauffer Chemical Company and then the nation's largest producer of DDT, was quoted in the New York Times saying that Carson wrote not as a scientist, but rather as a fanatic defender of the cult of the balance of nature. Belsico Chemical Corporation sent a 5-page letter to Carson's publisher, Houghton Mifflin, that her books were inaccurate and full of disparaging statements about 2 pesticides, chlorodorn and heptachlor, which were manufactured by Belsico. Even with all the personal threats, Carson continued. On June 3, 1963, Carson made her appearance before the Senate subcommittee about the misuse of pesticides. In her testimony, Carson didn't just highlight the problems that she wrote in Science Spring, she presented the policies that she'd been working on over the years. Carson didn't call for a ban on pesticides. She testified, "I think chemicals do have a place." She argued that the general population should know what was used to grow their food and understand the hazards that may come with it, such as long-term exposures heightens the chance of many cancers. Exposures can even affect children before birth and create a greater chance of autism and other birth defects. Pesticides, as she said in the book, can affect the environment, such as polluting water sources and the land. After pesticides are sprayed on farmland, it can stay underground for up to many decades. This pollution can accumulate on the area and can be too poisonous for anything to be planted on. Her book affected many government policies, and many of the chemicals in her book were either banned from use or was strictly restricted. Carson was fighting for the environment and awareness for the misuse of pesticides. Others might argue that Carson's idea that pesticides are to blame is wrong. Pesticides, as they say, is good for the growing nation by improving quantities of food and fighting disease. They believed that Carson did more harm than good when she gave pesticides a reputation. Carson proved them wrong by revealing the effects of this progress and the horrible future that may come. Her impact provided a safer future with pesticides. Only 2 years after the publication of Silent Spring, Carson lost her fight against breast cancer. She battled with the pain and even wore a wig once her hair began to fall off after chemotherapy. She kept her illness a secret because she was afraid that the pesticide companies might pin her with, "She wants to blame pesticides for her cancer." Her perseverance helped her continue to make a difference. She unfortunately had only seen the beginning of her work. After her death, people remembered her work and continued it. After the environmental movement was rekindled by Carson, the government continued to do research and pass new laws such as the Clear Air Act in 1963, a Stronger Clean Air Act in 1970, and the Water Quality Act in 1987. Many years after Carson's death, Gus Ariola made a comic of many insects and birds collecting flowers for her grave to remember her 77th birthday. Another comic called Ed Dodd's Mark Trail, a comic strip with a forest ranger made to educate the public about the effects of pesticides. Some songs were inspired by her, like The Big Yellow Taxi by Joni Mitchell. Even decades after her death, many are inspired by her and will never forget what she had done. Carson helped forge new laws to keep the public and the environment safer on pesticides, leading many others to continue, and revealing the bitter truth. Without her help, we wouldn't have realized the danger and make the changes that affect our lives today.